Hi, in this video we are going to discuss the essence of the book written by Allison. The book is called Destined to War. Can America and China escape the Thucydides trap?
As late as 2004, China was just half our size. By 2014, its GDP was equal to ours. And on the current trajectory, by 2024, it'll be half again larger. If you were a Martian watching this game, you would be not so clear, because the American democracy has looked increasingly dysfunctional. And this Chinese authoritarian model has worked better than I would have suspected. So who was Thucydides?
Thucydides is an ancient Greek philosopher who described the devastating Peloponnesian War between Sparta and Athens. Using the case of this conflict, Thucydides explained the origins of any war. What made war inevitable, Thucydides tells us, is the rise of Athens and the Spartan fear of the Athenian threat. Using these two notions of rise and fear, we can understand what is Thucydides' trap. Thucydides' trap is a severe structural stress that occurs when a rising power threatens to overthrow a ruling power. Ruling or status quo power is a contemporary hegemon. Rising power is a state that can shift the balance of power and become a new hegemon. What causes a structural stress of the trap are syndromes of powers. Rising power syndrome is a growing sense of self-importance and self-interests. Ruling power syndrome is a paranoia, an enlarged sense of fear and insecurity. Today, we are considering the contemporary case of the competition between the USA and China. We have three questions to discuss. First, are China and America destined to war? Second, if they do, what are the preconditions and reasons for the war to begin? Third, how can they escape the Thucydides trap? Or, in other words, how can they avoid war?
To answer our first question, are China and America destined to war? It is necessary to cover two themes: the scale of the conflict, the positions of power, and the dynamic of China's development as a rising power. It is the fact that Asia is a rapidly developing region nowadays. That is why the 21st century is called the contest for supremacy in Asia. Two great powers compete for the domination in Asia: a rising power of China that seeks domination in the region and recognition from the West, and a ruling power of the USA, a modern hegemon that is trying to contain China's growth in order to save its position. How is China growing? It is obvious that China can claim for the voice on the international arena only if it will gain power and prosperity to prove that it is a great political and economic actor. The Chinese strategy for doing this is, as the President Xi Jinping called it, a realization of China dream, a great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. Rejuvenation can be translated as renaissance. To revive the nation, there is a necessity to make China great again, to return China to the predominance in Asia it enjoyed before the century of humiliation when the West intruded. One of the basis forces is the statement, "Never forget our national humiliation." Guochi. They will never forget it and never let it happen again. To revive the nation, China needs to develop long-term strategies in three spheres: culture, economy, and politics. Cultural renaissance is a rise of nationalism. It is necessary to make China proud again. They encourage patriotism, creating a renewed sense of national identity based on the concept of Confucian national self-confidence and the key role of the Chinese Communist Party as a guardian of ideological conformity. Economic growth is a key source for China to gain influence, independence, and respect from the world. Thus, nowadays it is the arena of competition between China and the US. After the Great Recession of 2008, the growth gap in relative indicators of PPP between China and the US occurred, as the Western economies faced economic stagnation, while China's economy continued to grow persistently. Thus, after 2014, China became the biggest economy in the world. Why China's economic development is so fast? The major China strategy is economic imperialism. Its economic network is spreading across the globe. Rapid construction of infrastructure, improvements in social sphere, the STEM revolution, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics are rapidly developing in China. Basic political strategy of China is to stay not isolated but independent from the Western American-led politics. A good example of realization of this strategy in foreign affairs is the organized by China creation of BRICS as a group of rapidly expanding economies capable of making decisions and taking actions without supervision from the United States or the G7. To secure its independence from America, China needs to defend its domestic sovereignty. Re-establishing control of the territory of Greater China, Tibet and Taiwan. Recovering its historic sphere of influence along its borders and in the adjacent seas. Realization of strong army dream, rebuilding China's military so that it can, as Xi says, fight and win, by reorganizing soldiers and building the innovative weapon. We can conclude China Challenge, namely Rapid the Rise of China, which has the symptoms of rising power syndrome, possesses a threat to the USA hegemony in Asian region and in the world, what creates ruling power syndrome, fear and incentive to contain the rise of China.
To answer the second question, what are the preconditions and reasons for war to begin? We should firstly discuss some historical cases of Thucydides' dynamics, the lessons from history that explain how wars started. Reviewing the past 500 years, the Harvard Thucydides Trap project has identified 16 cases in which an ascending power challenged an established power. 12 of these rivalries resulted in war. The most influential among unsuccessful cases in the World War I, the conflict that began from the competition of Britain, the world's supreme naval and economic power, and rising power of Germany, seeking its place under the sun after the unification. The fear of European powers and their panic of ignorance made the devastated war possible. However, other cases demonstrate that the reasons for competition between rising and ruling powers over scarce resources, economic trading advantages, regional domination, and defense of national sovereignty. Now, we need to discuss the real preconditions and reasons for the conflict between China and the USA to begin. The major precondition is the fact that the USA and China belong to different civilizations and thus are the subject to clash of civilizations. According to the theory of Samuel Huntington, civilization is an entity that constitutes the most expansive level of cultural organization. In this view, the cultural conflicts of civilizations dominate the global politics. And this cultural conflict we are observing today. The USA and China are entirely contrasts in their vision of the world. However, there are major similarities between the two cultures. They claim to be superior and independent.
Now I would like to make a comparison between China and America. So what are the main differences between these two countries? They have different civilizations. America came from Western civilization, while China was created by Confucian civilization. As for self-perception, American self-perception is we are number one, while China sees itself as the center of the universe. Also, they have different concepts of the world order. America wants to have rule-based international order which will be imposed on all nations, while China wants to have harmonious hierarchy, which is respect from the neighbors and demand for dominance in the region. America focuses on international arena, while China focuses on domestic issues. The core value for America is freedom, for China is order. As for time limits, America does everything now, while China has eternity to do everything. These main differences between China and America make clash of civilizations inevitable. Unfortunately, this clash of civilizations may be a spark for the future military conflicts. The collision may appear in disputed territories or areas of influence, for example in South China Seas, in Taiwan with its national independence, in North Korea with its instability, or even economic conflict may turn into war. So we have achieved the final question that we needed to answer. Now we are going to explain the strategies that will help the USA to avoid the war. The major clues for peace are the international cooperation, cultural commonalities, economic interdependence. Nuclear war is not a justifiable option here, as it is prevented by MAD. And the great powers must accept the fact that they cannot win in such war. The next thing is accommodation, distinguishing of needs and wants. And the last one, domestic performance is decisive.
To conclude, we need to remember the basic questions which define the China challenge. Will the USA and China recognize the reality of share the 21st century in Asia? Will the USA and China be able to avoid the war despite all the strategical and cultural differences and structural stress of the Thucydides trap? The answer is no one knows, but the war is not inevitable.